The marriage covenant has certain expectations, certain characteristics, and we are here discussing the Christian marriage covenant. Number one, when you enter this covenant, like we said, it's between you, your spouse, and God. God is part and parcel of the covenant. Because like we saw in Malachi chapter 2, he's the one bringing you together in body and spirit so that you can bear a godly offspring. And that will be important. But the critical thing is to understand that he expects you, once you enter this covenant, to make it an exclusive union. And that's what he's saying in Genesis, and it's also repeated in Mark chapter 10, when he says, for this reason, a man shall live. It just means that he expects you to live all and be united to your wife. And I think that's a very, very important thing. Even when the Pharisees in Mark chapter 10 were testing him, that's really what he wanted them to understand, that if you come to a marriage, it's a covenant. And according to the scriptures, is an exclusive union. That's why he's saying, verse 6 of Mark 10, but at the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. And for this reason, a man will leave his father. You cannot really have this, be in this covenant, if you want to be polygamous. You cannot be in this covenant if you want your parents to be part of your marriage. You cannot be in this covenant if your children are part of this marriage, part of this covenant. Your children are product of the covenant, but they are not part of the covenant. It's an exclusive union, exclusive of friends. So you cannot allow your friends to come between you and your spouse. And we are not suggesting you not have friends. But what we are saying is that whatever friends you have, you need to understand they have to befriend both of you, because they cannot take one away from the other. You are one unit. You are one unit. And that's why when you get married to a man, my sister, any of your friends who are opposed to your boyfriend did not recommended you don't marry them and are very unhappy with you marrying them. You need to find a way of shedding them off, because you see there will be a danger to your marriage. It's an exclusive union, and anybody who does not support that union cannot be really friends. You can't have friends as a person who don't like your spouse, and you encourage that to continue, because then you are not understanding this exclusive union means that you will now be going together to the world as one unit, not as separated people. And many marriages suffer because that idea of becoming an exclusive union is not allowed. And we are talking both modern and traditional marriages have the same challenges. Maybe you are used to certain time with the boys. You get married, but you don't want to stop the relationship with the boys or even reduce it. You want to leave your wife lonely and alone so that you can spend time with the boys. My friend, the moment you are married, you need to come to where it is an agreement. Any relationship you have outside the home has also got the approval of your spouse, and she has a say. She can veto. I think that's really what you're talking about when you talk about an exclusive union. So it refers also to friends and your acquaintances and people that were close to you before you got married. So this covenant is of an exclusive union. So you must find a way to manage your old friends and now create new friends that are friends with both the husband and the wife. So you have to take over the friends of your husband, and your husband has to take over the friends that are that are of the wife, and that therefore this will be now the new unit's friends, because you are operating as a unit. So I think that's what. But the hardest of all living is actually leaving your parents, because they remember, they saw you come to earth, they have developed you from before you knew yourself, they love you deeply and want to your very best. So what happens? Because of that interest, out of love, if not managed, they cannot allow you to be on your own. They want to check on a daily basis. How is he looking after you? How is she looking after you? Now, my friend, if you don't leave your parents and allow them to follow you into your marriage, you are not having a marriage, a Christian marriage that follows the covenant, the Christian covenant. Because the Bible is telling us, for this is a man shall live. Who is he living? The mother and the father. They must be set apart so that what you are beginning. Now, you now have to understand that they have to deal with a new unit. That means the father of the girl is now the father of the boy. They are both your children. As a parent, you must accept both of them. Your son-in-law and your daughter must be accepted as your children, and you need to love them and to develop them together, because they left. When your daughter left and joined her husband, they are now one unit. You have to find a way. The parents have to learn to leave them on their own, even if they don't seem to be operating as well as you would have wanted them to, even if they... So as long as they have not called you in for advice and things like that, my friend, keep off, because you are dealing with an exclusive union which you are not a part of. And it will be very important. And obviously, we have to keep remembering the Word of God is the one that says that we are going to have to continue, even after marriage, honoring your father and your mother. And therefore, we are not suggesting because you have now left them, you don't respect them, you don't visit them, you don't deal with them. It's only the amount of time you allocate them now has to be determined by both of you. When are we visiting you? Remember, my sister, the father of your husband is now your father. The mother of your husband is also your mother. You now must be a unit as you visit either home. You don't belong here and don't belong here. You belong to your own. You have set up a third unit, different from the parents of the woman and different from the parents of the man. You have set up a different unit, and you must be seen as one unit. The parents of the girl and the parents of the boy must now recognize it as a separate unit, and they must respect it. But similarly, the two of them, the new couple, must learn to honor the parents and to respect them. And that will be very important. So this covenant is an exclusive covenant. It's only God, husband and wife, who are in it. Everybody else is external to the covenant and must be dealt with as an outsider to the union. Then it will be very important to understand that your parents no longer can give you instructions. They can only give you advice. And when advice is given, it will not be you deciding alone. You have to involve your spouse so that both of you evaluate the advice and decide whether to take it or not. And your parents, if they are wise, will not follow up with whether you implement or do not implement, because it's really your decision, not theirs. And that will be quite an important thing. I think the other thing that I see here, in this covenant, is that it's a voluntary union. Voluntary in the sense that you can't force a girl to marry you. You can't force a boy to marry you. And there are many ways of forcing, and that will make the covenant a little difficult. For example, if a girl got pregnant before the wedlock, and then they now have to marry in order to cover up the issues, and in order to, basically, you are not sure whether the girl would have married you if she did not get pregnant. You are not sure whether the boy would have married you if it's not that he was feeling guilty about your condition. So it becomes like a forced marriage. That doesn't mean the marriage will not do well, but it means the beginning is not the original intention of this covenant. The covenant is it needs to be two independent people who have the capacity to decide, voluntarily decide to marry and you can see clearly where the girl gets pregnant, the pregnancy itself becomes a force. The existence of the baby becomes a force that will force you together. That can be quite an issue. And sometimes it is, you feel what you are going through, you are such a financial strain that if I married, my financial strain will go. So you're not marrying the person, you are marrying his money. And so in the process, you have a challenge in terms of, were you forced? Would you have married the same person if you are financially independent? If you were able to do things on your own, would you have actually married the same person? And that will be something that you need to deal with. So that can be something that forces you into a marriage. And of course, if there's somebody listening to me who is not yet married, that's why you need to keep off from one another so that you don't end up with a pregnancy that forces you together. And also, number two, to understand that you are God's responsibility and God will provide. Accept whatever little God has given you, enjoy it. Don't force yourself into marriage. It could create a lot of havoc for the rest of your life. And so it's important to understand this covenant we are talking about is a covenant that's not only exclusive, is voluntary. You must allow things to happen that happen on their own. And there's a choice. You can say clearly, I made a choice to join this union. And that will be important. Thirdly, I'm looking at the challenges that could challenge you from calling it a voluntary union, and we have said pregnancy is one of them. We've said financial challenges are another one. The third one is culture. Some cultures say that the firstborn must marry before the secondborn, and then you have said the secondborn wants to get married, and you feel like you must marry. So you have no time to wait. So when a girl looks like acceptable, you just pick her. But if truth be told, you felt under pressure. You made a decision under pressure. And you would not have picked a person if you are left on your own. But that's the only person that was available. So what would you have done? So in the end, you decide to marry. But it's a pressure, social pressure, that got you into it. So it was not a voluntary union. You are forced by culture. Of course, it's not true. There is nothing in the Bible. If you really are a Christian, there's nothing in the Bible that forces you to not to allow your older brother to marry before you, or your younger brother to marry before you. Because the truth of the matter is, if he has found a wife and you haven't found, don't force yourself. Let him go right ahead. Nothing in the scriptures, at least those of us who are New Testament believers, will stop you from getting married because your brother or your sister is older or younger than you. I think that would be something that can force one to feel under pressure and to marry. And we need to look for ways of ensuring that whoever comes to this union can say clearly, I prayed, I felt God was leading me to him, I made a decision to go there. So if later there are challenges within marriage, you can't hold anybody responsible. There may be somebody who suggested, have you looked at that boy? But suggesting is not telling you to marry him. So it's your decision. You need to come to where it is your decision. You have evaluated, you have talked to God, and you have decided this is the way to go. So when challenges later come in marriage, you deal between yourself and God. You don't have anybody else you can hold responsible for whatever it is challenges you may be going through yourself. And I think that will be something that is pretty important. Thirdly, if we are talking about this covenant, this Christian marriage covenant, you need to understand that it needs to start openly. It needs an open start. When the Bible is saying, "For this a man shall live," it means he left the parents, that the parents know he left. That thing that makes us know that things have happened, you are now married, is called a wedding. And I'm calling it an open start. Can you imagine? You are telling your parents to you left when? Oh, I got married last year. Now here the word of God says you leave your father and mother. They need to be involved. They need to know you have actually left. And that process of telling them is what you call a wedding. So the wedding will be something that involves the parents of both sides, and therefore the families of both sides. But it's also be a family, not just a family thing. It will also be a Christian thing. So your pastor needs to know, so that the next time he sees you together, he doesn't say, "Wait, why are you getting so close to that woman?" So it needs to be an open start. Otherwise, it's going to bring a lot of confusion, which is not a fair thing. It's not good to allow confusion in a relationship. So the covenant is assumed not only to be exclusive, not only to be voluntary, it's also assumed to have an open start, that you can tell it has started, and you can tell that this man belongs to this woman. So what that tells you is that a come we stay is not the way of this covenant. Have you heard of marriages that are called come we stay? I keep telling people, if it is just the two of you saying come we stay, next time you'll say come we go. It means that you can very easily drop in and drop out of a relationship. That's not the scriptures. The scripture expects you to make a long-term commitment to this person. In fact, when you talk about immorality is when you sleep with a person with whom you have not yet made a long-term commitment, with witnesses. The Old Testament, and also repeated in the New Testament, says anything must be established in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. That's what the wedding is all about. It's creating witnesses. You marry in a come we stay, and somebody says, no, I'm fed up, I'm not leaving. He has a right, because he's the one who decided to come in, he can go out. But in a covenant, you are coming in, but you can't leave at leisure. And that's why the wedding brings in the 2 families and brings up friends as witnesses. And that will be something that you have to think about. Did I start? Am I starting in an open manner where everybody's involved? Remember, in all this discussion, I'm talking about giving people tea or financially expensive wedding. No, it doesn't even have to cost anything. Can be done during a Sunday service. Just tell your pastor, I want to marry as an item within the Sunday service. And he'll marry you, basically, because that's all he wants. You do your vows, you sit back and he preaches the sermon. You are fully married. And as long as you have involved your parents from both sides and your relatives, and the church is now involved, it will be as good a wedding as any other. One day when you have money, you could give us tea. But you don't have to give us tea right at the beginning. It depends on whether you have the money and you want to give us tea. But if you don't have tea, it will be okay, very, very okay, for you to have a simple wedding during a Sunday service, as long as you involve the parties. So if it's a covenant, you don't want people to think you are walking in darkness. You must walk in the light. That's a Christian way. That's a biblical way. So a Christian marriage covenant must start openly with a wedding, however cheap, where the parents of both sides know and the pastor is involved as a representative of God in beginning of this marriage. And that, I think that that will be something that will be very, very important for us. So, we are clear. Marriage cannot be before a wedding. And that will not be biblical. The wedding must also always come before marriage. Don't put a cart before the horse. And that's really what we are talking about. We hear of many weddings coming and the children of the marriage are already participating in the wedding. That's not the way this covenant begins. It will be important to understand that. You know, the third thing I want to mention about this covenant is that it's a permanent covenant. It's a very tough thing because God, what we keep saying, what God has put together, let no man separate. What God has put together. That's what verse 9 is saying. Therefore, that's Mark chapter 10, verse 9. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And no one is wide. Your parents cannot say, I'm unhappy with your husband, come back. No, they are not allowed. The scriptures are saying no one can separate. Your parents are included in it. The parents of the guy are included in it. The pastor is also included in it. He can't say, this marriage of yours, I want to call it off. No, it's not him. It's the Bible is saying God is involved in your marriage. Let no one separate. And I think that be therefore what God has joined. That's why we emphasize an open start where there is prayer and a commitment. What God has joined. That's why you need a wedding. But if truly God has joined it, then it will be very clear that it must be a permanent union and not something you can drop in and drop out of at all. So, but we are saying with that start, please understand the reason you are going to all that process of ensuring it's a clear, open start is because it's like a dual carriageway. It's one-way traffic. You enter onto that road and you can't change direction. You have to go until the next roundabout. In the case of marriage, the next roundabout is called death. So what we are talking about, this covenant starts a permanent union where divorce is not an option. And I think that's really something that we have to ask ourselves whether that's something that we are clear about before the wedding. Because once we are in it, it's a car. Marriage is a car with only a forward gear. It has no reverse gear. And I think that will be something that you have to think about. You see, somebody said that this covenant is like you get one paper, another paper, and put glue and join the two papers together. Even if you wanted to separate them, you can't do it without parts of paper A going to part B. Try to separate a paper that has been glued together, and you'll see you'll succeed in separating, but with ruining of both papers. And that's the same thing about divorce. Divorce cannot happen without both parties suffering ruin. So you need to understand that what you are entering into, there's no possibility of pulling out until death do us part. It's a permanent union, and you need to give it the permanence. That's why you take time, like I've kept saying, to think through before entering. But once you are in, you just talk about how to sort out issues, not how to separate. You build your marriage, you grow your marriage, because you know there isn't anywhere else that you're intending to go. And I think that will be very, very important. You know, you cannot allow anybody to come into the middle of the relationship. And that will be very important. Like, you see, another example I like giving is of two people entering a boat, maybe Lake Victoria. And after they have been moved together to about 20 kilometers still in the lake. They start quarreling. And instead of sort out their issues, they decide to divide the canoe or the boat to two sides, right in the middle. Tell the wife, this is your side, and this is my side. Later, the man feels a little discouraged and just decides to start to make a hole and see what would happen if he was able to get a hole into the canoe. And he starts hammering away. If the wife is wise, she needs to understand if he actually succeeds in creating a hole and they're in the middle of Lake Victoria, chances are they will sink. He can't sink alone. It's one ship, one boat. They will sink both of them. And that's what you think about your marriage. That it's not one party. It's both parties. So you cannot allow your husband to do things that will jeopardize the marriage. Plead with him, beg him, look for counsel, but don't leave him to continue on the route he has taken that will destroy the marriage. It's a permanent union. And even if he leaves you, you can't marry somebody else because you are still married, and the scriptures are saying you have to stay together, so you just keep waiting for him to come back. And that in itself will have challenges. But the point I want you to understand is that you should not be in a rush to enter into something that is so binding. You should not be in a rush to enter into a relationship that you cannot reverse. And that's why you need to understand up front. It's a permanent union where everybody is going to stay for life. The fact it's permanent gives you security to thrive. So you're not trying to please or to do that. You are sure you have security of tenure, so to put it. You are in this marriage to stay. And I think that security is going to make it easier to take risks in the marriage and therefore to get higher returns. And I think that will be something that you need to think about very clearly. That if you want security, then you must accept that you can't leave and he can't leave. And that will create security for both of you. And I think that will be what everybody will be telling you if they really love your marriage. That this is permanent, and you need to be careful how you deal with it. Finally, I want to say that this covenant is transparent. We learned that they were naked and felt no shame. Now, my friend, is that what you have in mind? Or do you have certain secrets, certain parts of your body you do not want your wife to see, certain parts of your mind you don't want your wife to see, certain sides of your emotions you don't want to see? We are learning you have to be naked. All your secrets need to be let out to the spouse so that the both of you know each other. Your wife can speak on your behalf without any contradiction, because she understands you, she knows you, you have been open. So if you really are going to be people that want to be in a marriage covenant, the Christian way, I think it will be important to ask how transparent you are with one another. Are you naked to one another? Or are you full of shame? And there are many parts or many issues you cover. You don't want your spouse to ever hear about them. You even tell your mother, never allow my husband to know this. No. In a good marriage, there isn't anything at all that's confidential. Of course, you agree that you will not go telling people about it. But at least the two of you must know it. And I think that's one of the things that will cause ripples in a marriage. Because you say, hey, what about if I tell him and he changes his mind? It's okay. He's not the only person you can marry. There are others. So, it's an exclusive union, it's a voluntary union. It has an open start, it's a permanent union, and it's transparent. And we have kept emphasizing it is dissolved by death, according to 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 39. After death, you can marry anybody. That relationship has died. May you truly check whether your marriage is a covenant marriage.